We walk the line of fire as witches and demonologists. There is a balance. We have an opposite to everything, and it's incredibly important to understand that. Witches, demonologists, paranormal investigators. I've seen people levitate. I've seen people slapped, their hair pulled, pushed, thrown across the room, all sorts of things. My study of the existences of these different types of entities, my data that I've extracted from my life during these studies, it's undeniable. I have come face to face with demons, fallen angels, dark angels. All three terms are used by ethereal angels and the dead to describe these diabolical entities. And the spirits, and you can go back through my vaults and look, all over the world, they've said they're running from demons. So most of you are already aware that I am moving to New England and most likely Salem, Massachusetts. This has been in the works for many years, and my historical society is in Massachusetts. I have a lot of work up there. I don't want to drive 38 hours back and forth anymore, and I'm ready to settle and continue the path that I was on with my move to Salem before COVID hit. Now, I decided to do a seance prior to my move in a couple of weeks, and it was all about Mary Sibley. So when I wake up, I go into my seance room or my office, which I don't really have right now because I'm moving. But I have empty rooms, which makes it all that more exciting. So I start the seance by asking what the angels can tell me in regards to Mary Sibley. And this is what they said. So let's talk about the nexus for a moment. Some of y'all in the past seance sessions have learned kind of what a nexus is and why it's a part of, well, seance, psychic abilities, crossing over the dead, even witchcraft. A nexus is the central and most important point or place. It's a connected group of series, a connection or series of connections linking two or more things. So when the angels speak of a nexus, they're speaking of the connected soul and mind with the vessel and all the spirits around, and being able to open doorways or portals. For example, the light and crossing over souls, which is why you've heard many times spirits speak of angels or the Christ or Mary or, and so forth in my sessions over the years. Now, I have never been religious. I have studied religion and, from the craft, which is in different religions and practices, to biblical religions and things like that for 3 decades. The desolate lake that they're speaking of, you have to understand that in seance, religion does come up. Biblical terminology, vocabulary, it does come up from either the dead, angels, or the diabolical. They do acknowledge a God. They do acknowledge deities. They do acknowledge fallen or quote-unquote dark angels, demons, magical practices, ethereal angels, ethereal entities, extraterrestrials, different bloodlines. So, you have all these different acknowledgements. And, this is what I usually tell my clients who are usually in disbelief, especially if it's a church that they bought and they renovated into a home or a shop. They're like, well, it seems to be all about demons and angels. And I have to tell them, well, we are not the only ones on this planet. There are other entities. And there are biblical and cultural records and history of this, and it's important to pay attention to it. There's usually a message, and the angels have told me what is correct and what is not correct within different transcripts of biblical books. as well as grimoires and much more. So the desolate lake, when they told me to go look that, when they told me to go look at that in the Bible, I was able to find it, and it's linked to the second coming of Christ, which is interesting, and the lake of fire. And this goes back into ancient Egyptian religions as well as ancient Christian religion, and is based around paganism. So we can't dismiss all the different cultures and religions, because otherwise the otherworldly will not work with us. They will not trust us, and they will not guide us. It's very important to understand that. We can never be closed-minded to any of this. It doesn't mean we have to choose, because I never did. I'm not an atheist. I'm not agnostic. I know what's out there. I've seen it after I died and in my life, and I document it now. So when it comes to the hunt, the way that angels have taught me throughout my entire life, and the proof that has been shown to me, and as a demonologist and in witchcraft, we are hunted. When we have the light, diabolical entities, the negative, malevolent entities, they hate us because they fear us, because we have the power to banish them, to exorcise a living vessel or place. And in order to do that, we have to hone the psychic abilities. There are many, and this comes from the light. It sounds crazy, but that's why this stuff is not very public, especially even when it comes to the Vatican. And even the Vatican acknowledges all this, and they have a base in the United States that studies extraterrestrial existences, amongst much more that the Warrens wrote in their books and told me about, that's in the Vatican's vault, kept from the world. As a demonologist, I have knowledge, and a lot of it that is hidden from the public. When it comes to battling evil, it's a very real way of life, a very real path. This is not an aesthetic, this is not a joke, and this is not a thrill. This is real. People all over the world reach out to me, and it's because they're really going through diabolical experiences, or sometimes it is ethereal. My study of the existences of these different types of entities, my data that I've extracted from my life during these studies, it's undeniable. I have come face to face with demons, fallen angels, dark angels. All three terms are used by ethereal angels and the dead to describe these diabolical entities. And the spirits, and you can go back through my vaults and look, all over the world, they've said they're running from demons because they are hunted by demons. But so are people like myself, witches, demonologists, paranormal investigators. You know, I even work with deputies who have knowledge of this stuff, but they can't say anything. So they come to me, and it's discreet. Not only that, you know, I've seen people levitate. I've seen people slapped, their hair pulled, pushed, thrown across the room, all sorts of things. These kinds of studies. You can't have psychic abilities without eventually being a target or hunted by the diabolical. Something that I tell all my students is when you are helping spirits, you must educate yourself on the basis of the knowledge that encapsulates the protection of you, your family, your belongings. Because the spirits have said thousands of times to me that they are running from demons. So one thing I always teach my students is that when we do this work, we have to take procedures for safety for ourselves, our animals, our vehicles, our home, and our belongings. Because we walk the line of fire as witches and demonologists. Think of this, for example. Have you ever seen the show Constantine or the movie? In the show, Constantine uses witchcraft to fight the demonic. In Charmed, the Halliwell sisters, they use witchcraft to fight the demonic. And this is going to lead into the discussion I'm going to have about angels and what they say about the black arts and white magic, which are two separate things, practices. And let me tell you why. There is a balance. We have an opposite to everything, and it's incredibly important to understand that. If we say, okay, well, there's black magic, there's no white magic, that's wrong. There are both. And then I've had my experiences since childhood, and even with priests that I had to learn some things from growing up, of the white magic practices that they use. It's just hidden from the public. More often than not, people are unaware of this, but witches, certain types, there's different types of witches for everything. There's ones who fight the dark, demonic forces, help people and children and the dying and the dead. And then there are the opposite of that. It is a very real practice and phenomenon, and I have proof of it. Now, in many thousands of seances that I've had in my life, whenever I reach out to a client's deceased loved one or a specific angel or a deity or something like that, I do request permission from the light to summon them, and I have 11 beings that help me, 3 angels and 8 ethereal entities. Now take note that I would never summon a spirit or entity against their will. It is not respected when it comes to the other side, the otherworldly. It is considered a very bad thing. During my seance sessions, I always require proof, confirmation from the angels and the 8 ethereal beings. Unfortunately, Mary Sibley did not show up. However, there were messages brought to me from her, just like with the Warrens and many others that I've helped. And I've helped deputies, nurses, EMS, doctors, surgeons, civilians, death doulas, therapists, hospice workers. The list goes on. There's always some kind of confirmation. So when they told me that Mary Sibley did not show up, it was a confirmation for me, because I would never summon a spirit or a soul, whether they're in heaven or the underworld or walking the earth, against their will. It is never okay to do that. This is a really good reason right here why they always say they respect me. It's all these other things. And they trust me, and I have a bond with these ethereal beings, because I would never do anything to disrespect or harm whoever I'm reaching out to or helping when it comes to a seance or anything, even spell work. So Archangel Raphael, he's known as the angel of healing. He heals the mind, the spirit, and the body. So the vessel, the soul, you can enjoy peace and bliss to the fullest extent. I actually have not heard Angel Raphael spoken of in a very long time. But I've been working with a lot of people who are dying lately, many who are sick with COVID. Oh, it's just awful. And so it doesn't surprise me that he was here and wanted to confirm his presence for me. I also believe that when they said that Mary was saved, that I don't think she went to this lake of fire, the desolate lake. I think that perhaps Raphael may have healed her in some way, to be honest with you, because I remember in the story she said her heart could find no peace, and then here you hear a man say, evil heart, and I assume that meant her, and then it says she was saved and went into the light. So then I proceed to ask what the angels can tell me in regards to the witches' trials. They said shameful and some other things. Remember that I'm only showing you what I was able to decipher from the seance, the EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon, the words, terminology, vocabulary that I extracted from the documentation. And, then we'll proceed further. Now, witches go back, the religion, all of it, it goes back before Mesopotamia, even before Christ, to the holiest women within the communities long ago. So one day before my Mary Sibley seance, I asked the angels to give all witches a message. It's extraordinary. It's not the first time I've heard it, but this is the first time I'm sharing this with the world. The angelic messages to witches globally.